So you don't need to live your whole life comforting your inner child. You don't need to be doing that. The primary feeling that we got as a child, the baseline, the main feeling that we got as a child will usually become the feeling that is familiar to us. Any familiar feeling is very likely to become the feeling or feelings that we are addicted to and we choose even as an adult. Hiya guys, today I'm speaking all about the inner child and my take on the inner child work, trauma healing, and moving past the pains that hurt our child self that still affect our adult self. So first of all, I got some baking powder in my eye. If that's looking red in the video, if you're watching on the video, that is why. Oh my gosh, I have like one red eye and one normal eye right now. Cool. Okay, so before we begin, my name is Naomi Dunn, and I'm an inner work coach and an EFT practitioner, and I help people with trauma healing and emotional processing. And so that's why I have a lot to say on this specific topic and my take from what I have seen with people and with myself when it comes to inner child work and the inner child itself. So if you would like coaching, if you feel called to coaching, you want someone by your side as you're working on yourself or processing your trauma, I'm here to help you with that, and that can be booked down below through the link if you're interested. Okay, let's begin. Also, I speak on all things healing and personal development, so if you like that kind of content, I really recommend you subscribe. The inner child. So I've heard a lot of perspectives on the inner child, and a lot of people think that inner child work is ridiculous, or the concept of an inner child is ridiculous, and I can understand from their perspective why it seems strange or weird, unusual, or something that we shouldn't do, but the truth is that our unprocessed traumas come up in our adult life if they are wanting to be heard and processed, and they come up through triggers. And if we have been triggered as a child, what will happen as an adult is when we experience those triggers, we tend to regress into that childlike self in that moment of the trigger. So if you have ever seen anybody, or if you have seen yourself, it's very common in relationships when people get triggered, maybe a fight happens or something happens, you will notice a sense of immaturity coming from yourself or the other person in the moment of the trigger. Almost childlike behavior in that moment. And this is because we regress back to the age at first we were triggered if the trauma is not healed in us, and if we do not have the awareness in that moment of what is actually happening. So sometimes we see ourselves or we see other adults acting childlike, having almost childlike tantrums when their trauma is being triggered, when the insecurity is being triggered that was developed in their childhood. That part of us is going to show up in a lot of ways for us, many different ways. It's going to give us this false lie, this false belief that we are not worthy, and we are going to walk and talk and act and pursue things in life that reflect our level of worthiness that we think we have, the amount that we think we are deserving of. So we will pursue things in relationships and bad experiences because we have a cap of how much worth we think we have, therefore a cap of how many good things we can hold in this life and allow for ourselves. It'll show up also as us not allowing for ourselves to be authentic in this world, okay? Not feeling good because we're not being our true self, and inauthenticity creates lots of effects in our life, including physical effects, which I talk about on this channel. We can't feel good in life, we can't feel fulfilled in life if we're not being our authentic self, because we are being somebody that we were not designed to be, okay? When we have the parts of us that were not healed, the traumas inside of us from our childhood that were not healed, how it will also show up is it shows up in relationships tremendously, okay? Not just with those almost temper tantrum like triggers when we were triggered by our trauma, but also through the beginning of relationships. We might find ourselves being more desperate for love that we did not receive in the past, okay? We might find ourselves choosing and attracting the toxic partners that remind us of the past. We can also find ourselves not allowing ourselves to feel and process our emotions because we learned to shut down our emotions because we went through too many painful things in our childhood for us to feel safe with our processing of the emotions, okay? Speaking of safety, there are a lot of things that those with childhood trauma will consider as unsafe, even if they are healthy for us, like the healthy relationships, the healthy experiences, the beautiful things that life can offer. We might deem as unsafe because they are unfamiliar to the toxicity and the dysregulation we have experienced for most of our life. The primary feeling that we got as a child, the baseline, the main feeling that we got as a child will usually become the feeling that is familiar to us. Any unfamiliar feeling is very likely to become the feeling or feelings that we are addicted to and we choose even as an adult. So we will move towards the things that resemble that same feeling, whether that feeling was chaos, dysregulation, discomfort, anxiety, whatever feeling it was for you, your inner child or the version of yourself that gets triggered from your childhood traumas will gravitate to things that move towards that feeling. And almost all of this resembles self-sabotage. We do the things that don't serve us. We treat ourselves in a way that resembles the way we were treated in the past, or we almost desire to treat ourselves in a way that resembles how we were treated when we were younger. So it's a real thing. And a lot of people who are saying the inner child work is pointless and we shouldn't have any sort of focus on inner child work whatsoever are actually the people who are getting triggered in their everyday life. So this is why it is important to have a focus on healing those parts of our childhood that creates our triggers, because it can cause us to show up in the world in a way that we don't want, and it causes us to feel a way and experience triggers that we don't want to experience. So when it comes to this, the inner child, we don't actually have a child self inside of us, an actual inner child inside of us. We have the parts of us that are unhealed from our childhood inside of us. My take on inner child work, I'm going to share that with you guys because I want you guys to move past these triggers. And my take on inner child work is that a lot of the advice we give is fantastic for comfort. Okay, it's fantastic for temporary comfort. But I don't often see the advice given and those methods and those things that people are advised to do. I don't often see those methods actually healing people from the actual reason they are getting these triggers. Okay, I see them providing, like I said, temporary comfort. So if people have come to me and people have said things like they were advised to, go play at the playground because their childlike self would have liked that. Go watch the movies that their childlike self would have loved. Go, give themselves a hug when they were upset. Give themselves the needs that were not met as a child. These things can be really fantastic for those who had some unmet needs and feel the discomfort from those needs not being met. Okay, when they give themselves those needs, they now have this new awareness and perspective that, oh, I am worthy of my needs being met. I get to have these experiences as an adult. I am not against any method that I have seen of inner child healing. I love all of them because they can provide really great comfort. But my biggest thing is I want to help people move past the real cause for their triggers, so that they no longer continue getting these triggers, because I have seen again and again that those who take the advice, which there's nothing wrong with the advice, please implement the advice if it makes you feel good and it comforts you, but they take this advice thinking that this is 100% solely the thing that will heal them from their childhood trauma, but from the patterns I have seen, this isn't often enough. If you fully believe that this will be the thing for you that will heal you, and you know it intuitively, go for it and pursue that only, okay? But if you're finding yourself still getting triggered and only getting temporary relief from doing these inner child activities, then these aren't the things that are going to heal you. They're just going to be things that bring you comfort. My take on this is that we actually process. We take the time in pursuing processing the baseline real root reason as to why these triggers are happening, instead of stepping into ourselves every time we get triggered and say, you know what, younger self, it's okay, everything will be okay, we're okay now. Do that still. But to actually stop getting triggered, realize that we have to process what's creating the trigger in the first place so that we stop getting the triggers. And like I always say, this is not to shame, not to blame. However you've been trying to heal your trauma, there's no necessarily wrong way to do it, but I'm trying to teach you the most effective way to move past in the fastest and smoothest way possible for you. So you don't need to live your whole life comforting your inner child. You don't need to be doing that. So we choose the trauma processing tool. We choose the thing that we think, okay, this could work for us, and we pursue that thing. And we want to try our best to actually process it and not just gain awareness of it, because gaining awareness of it can sometimes set us into a trap of becoming more of a victim of our problem and understanding more about it instead of actually moving out of it. Okay, we want to process and dissolve it. Dissolve the pain that is coming in the body from the pain of the trauma. Feeling and allowing ourselves to temporarily indulge in the feelings that come up as we think about our trauma, as we talk about our trauma. Allowing ourselves to feel as much as we can in a safe place that will not set us into a panic mode. We have to know our bodies. We have to know what's going to set us into panic or not. Allowing ourselves to feel the emotions that come up as we think about the trauma. If we can't feel our emotions, we work on actively pursuing emotional processing and feeling the emotions, because we have to allow ourselves to feel. We have to give ourselves permission to feel, and sometimes we struggle to feel, and sometimes we struggle with disassociation, and I speak on that too because I've had experience with that too. But my biggest thing with healing and my disassociation was that I had to first realize there is a problem with not feeling my emotions, which set me into place to realize I need to prioritize feeling my emotions. So I pursued, like a sport, practicing feeling my emotions. Okay, I would do the EFT tapping, I would play the sad music, I would do literally anything just so I could feel the emotion, practice feeling, and through that I started to practice processing the trauma. So I recommend, if you want to know how to process your trauma, or if you want somebody to help you with trauma processing, I'm here to help you. This is what I'm all about on this channel. Okay, so I made a video on how to stop getting triggered by your trauma. I'm gonna put that video on the screen, and I offer coaching, like I said, with this specific topic if you feel called to that, if that is something that you want to do right now. But if you just want to learn more, I have videos for you to watch to gain an understanding on how to process your trauma. You don't need to remember your trauma in order to heal it. You don't need to remember. We need to process the feelings that are coming up. So I hope this video helped you, and let me know if it did. Yeah, I know my eye is totally reacting to this baking powder. I hope that wasn't distracting, that my eye was gradually getting this red mark throughout this whole video.